Hi everybody, this is Listen. Thank you for listening. Today we're going to talk about how China works. How China really drives growth, power, and change. To understand how China works, you first need to understand how power flows inside the system. How power moves around inside the system. At the very top, political power is highly centralized in China. By highly centralized, we mean controlled tightly by the central leadership. And it's also extremely consolidated, which means it's gathered into very few hands, extremely consolidated. And then it gets interesting. The central government holds a crucial lever, a powerful control mechanism, a crucial lever over local officials. The central government decides their fate, their future career and freedom. Whether a mayor will be promoted, moved up to a higher position, whether the mayor will be removed, fired, or even jailed, put in prison, sent to jail. And this single fact, the fact that the central government holds this power over the mayors, los alcaldes, this single fact shapes almost everything that happens at the local level. I'm going to try and explain this using phrasal verbs and idioms along the way. This will be upper intermediate to C1 level audio. So here we go. So this system creates what many people call the mayor economy. This is a system where mayors compete fiercely with one another. To compete fiercely means to fight aggressively for advantage. Each mayor constantly checks up on, monitors, checks up on the performance of neighboring cities. The question is always the same: who's growing the fastest? For many years, the main measurement tool, the main yardstick, we say, the measurement tool they used to judge local officials was GDP growth. GDP growth is the total value of goods and services produced. If one city grew faster than another, its mayor gained political capital, influence, useful influence that helps a career advance. This competition was what we call cutthroat, meaning brutal, unforgiving. Local leaders weren't just managing cities. They were fighting, competing, racing toward top national positions. Now, whether this system was efficient, whether it was able to use resources well, this is still argued today. This is open to debate, we say. But what can't be denied is that it fueled, it powered and accelerated an extraordinary period of economic expansion. At first, the focus was industrialization, the growth of factories and manufacturing. Industrialization. Everyone wanted to export. But then came a major discovery: land. Local governments realized they could generate massive fiscal revenue. Fiscal revenue is money collected by the state by selling land use rights and pushing real estate development. cities began to urbanize, expand urban areas, urbanize. And they built at a staggering pace, really, really quickly. Money kept rolling in. This means arriving continuously, rolling in, and local governments reinvested it. They invested heavily in companies. They plowed money into just means invested heavily. Plowed money into property projects and infrastructure. And this is how the property cycle became the dominant force. A property cycle is a repeated boom and then slowdown in real estate. Everything moved at double speed, meaning much faster than normal, double speed, because incentives were designed to reward expansion above all else. Everyone was building. Today, the biggest challenge China faces is not production. It excels at that. It's really, really good at that. But consumption, meaning how much people actually spend, consumption. To become a rich country, a nation must also become a consuming nation. This is a country where people feel confident enough to buy, not just save. So why not just make consumption, how much people actually spend, why not make consumption part of the yardstick, the measuring tool for local governments? This question exposes a major flaw, a major defect. When environmental protection was briefly included as a goal, most local governments didn't take it seriously. They didn't act with any real commitment. Why? Because it reduced GDP growth. Protecting the environment often meant slowing factories or halting projects. Eventually, the central government became fed up. Fed up means angry and frustrated after waiting too long. And they made environmental performance a penalizing factor. This is a rule that causes punishment for failure. As soon as they did this, as soon as they made environmental performance a penalizing factor, things changed quickly. Pollution controls kicked in. They started to work effectively. They kicked in. And within a few years, cities like Beijing, they had clear blue skies, showing how powerful incentive design can be. Now, GDP measures production, but it doesn't tell you whether people feel secure, meaning safe enough to spend instead of hoarding money. Hoarding just means saving, keeping. So GDP doesn't tell you whether people feel secure enough to spend money. A country can borrow heavily and pour money into infrastructure, spend massively on infrastructure, pour money into infrastructure without creating real prosperity. For a long time, local governments relied on debt and construction because it looked really productive on paper. More recently, innovation and unicorns. Unicorns are just startups valued at over $1 billion. They became informal benchmarks, informal measuring tools. So this led to strange outcomes. Do you really need 80 cities building electric vehicles? Or dozens of solar panel champions? Every city wanted a national champion, a flagship company supported by the state. So technology became part of the competition, but very often without any coordination. To really boost consumption, growth must come from people buying goods and services, not endless investment projects. And that requires stronger social security, more spending on healthcare, elderly care, and job creation. Things that make people comfortable spending instead of saving. You need stronger social security, healthcare, elderly care, and job creation to make people comfortable spending instead of saving. In the early stages of strategic industries like EVs, electric vehicles, or solar panels, the state plays a critical role by mobilizing resources, meaning organizing people and capital and supply chains quickly. Waiting for markets alone can take decades, so the state often plays a crucial role in the early stages. But once competition matures, the state needs to step aside or retreat, meaning reduce involvement. Governments are not really good at picking winners, choosing which companies will succeed. Markets do that better through competition. Now, Western economics often ignores this initial big push, this first big push by the state. Yet China's experience shows it was vital. The downside? Massive waste, meaning money invested in companies that eventually failed, and misallocation of resources, where capital goes to the wrong places. On balance, meaning when everything is considered, the results have been positive, especially in industries with no established or global leader. Now, why doesn't the mere economy work in the West? Well, in China, mayors answer to the central government. In the West, leaders need to win elections. Citizens usually prefer spending on healthcare and education rather than chasing GDP figures. And this difference reflects a fundamental divide, a deep structural difference, a fundamental divide between political systems. Chinese culture is often seen as long-term and patient, capable of planning decades ahead. And that's true, politically and socially. But there's another side, short-termism. This means a focus on fast results. This is captured by a famous phrase, short, flat, fast. This was originally a volleyball strategy. It became a mindset. In business, it means quick turnaround, low emotional investment, and fast exit. Investors want to cash out, meaning sell quickly for profit. This mentality produced rapid growth, but also cheap products. It also brought along copying and fragile companies. Many firms that shot up rose quickly, later fell apart. They collapsed. And today, this mindset is fading. In China, the younger generations care more about quality and values. The recent economic slowdown has forced people to look inward, we say, meaning reflect deeply. So the lesson is clear. Economies move in cycles, periods of growth and decline. Opportunistic, short-term thinking eventually runs out of road, meaning it stops working, it runs out of road. While prolonged economic weakness is painful, it's often a necessary wake-up call, a moment that forces important change. Some of the key vocabulary around this subject: centralized, consolidated. This just means controlled by a small group. A yardstick is a measurement standard, a measurement tool. Fiscal revenue, this is government income. Consumption, household spending. A unicorn is a billion-dollar startup. Misallocation of resources, this is the inefficient use of capital. Social security, public welfare systems. A few phrasal verbs, and the few that are used in this subject fairly regularly. To hold the key, this means to have decisive control. To check up on is to monitor performance. To fuel growth, this means to drive expansion. To roll in, when money rolls in, for instance, this is to arrive in large amounts. To plow money into, this is to invest heavily. To cut into is to reduce. To kick in, this means to begin to take effect. To step aside or retreat, in this context means to reduce involvement. To cash out, sell for profit. To fall apart is to collapse. A few of the idioms and sayings you'll hear around this subject: cutthroat competition. This is ruthless rivalry. Double speed, extremely fast. Fed up. This means to be completely frustrated. On balance, when we say on balance, we mean considering everything. And a wake-up call is an event forcing change, a wake-up call. And that's everything for today. This is Listen. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to share and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, bye-bye for now.